Painting WarCry today. It's a skirmish game for Age of Sigmar. And I've got this fantastic figure. I'm really looking forward to painting it. It's going to be awesome. I think I'm going to move my light real quick. Change the angle of the video. I should in turn change the angle of the light too. I'm kind of changing this all the time, trying to come up with the perfect combination. So let's see if you can see that. Yeah, I think you can see it pretty well, other than I'm facing the back. Yeah, I think you can see that pretty well. Really awesome figure that WarHammer has made for this game. So I'm really looking forward to painting this guy. A lot of detail. It's going to take a long time. So get yourself a glass of water and buckle up, Buttercup, because it's going to be a while. So this will be WarCry Painting 7, I believe. And 6 is where I painted this guy. If you want to watch that video, it's restricted by YouTube because I had the camera oriented so that you could see my feet. And most of the time, I don't know why YouTube restricts my videos, but in this case, I know it's because my feet were showing. So I'll be careful not to do that in the future, at least I know, right? And then WarCry Painting 5 is this guy here. I'm really happy with the way he turned out. So I've got to paint the bases, and I'll be painting that with Vallejo Surface Primer, US Olive Drab. It's pretty close to my favorite Death Road Forest. If I'm not happy with that color, I can go over it with Death Road Forest once it's primed. I've been having a little bit of problem with these resin bases, getting them to hold the primer. So when I painted the figures flesh colored using Vallejo Surface Primer that I had mixed together 3 or 4 colors to make, maybe 5, it's in my Flesh 3 video. And use the airbrush to spray it. It wasn't really sticking to the bases super well. So I'm probably with a brush gonna go over it with a little bit of primer. I'll put that primer on the wet palette and dilute it a little bit. I have these for brushes. I believe this brush has never been used. So it doesn't hold very much paint, but there's a lot of detail on this. So I think it might work out pretty well for this. And since I've never used it, I'm eager to use it. This brush right here, it looks pretty clean and pretty nice. Maybe I've never used this one either. I'm going to use for the bases if I make the video that long. And this brush right here is one that wasn't cleaned and messed up. It's got paint down in the ferrule. Paint was allowed to dry on it. It's a mess. I'm going to use it dry to remove any whoopses. And then I'm going to clean it real well with hot water and detergent or soap and 91% isopropyl alcohol, also called rubbing alcohol, the stuff they put on your skin when they give you a shot. At the doctor's office, I'm going to use that to get as much of the paint out of the ferrule as I can and try to save this brush. Even though this brush basically cost 5 cents, I bought a whole bunch of brushes for like $2 at Walgreens. But I hate to, now that I paint with acrylic paint, and I actually can paint the brushes non-toxically, I hate to ruin any brushes. Okay, so I'm going to go through the paints in the opposite order of how I'm going to apply them. So last of all, I'm going to use the metallic paint, AK Interactive Brass Colored, if he's got any chainmail, which the last two figures have, so I'm not sure if he has it. One thing I'll definitely be painting with the brass color is this little star, or this little asterisk, or whatever you call that shape, that's hanging from his horn. I will definitely be coloring that, so I will be using the metallic. I use that last because other paints don't like metallic very much, because the little pieces of metal are hard to get rid of, right? Okay, I will be using for this one of my favorite paints. If you watched my videos before, I bought this set of paints, 7 paints on Amazon, and they arrived in like a day for $7. So 7 paints for $7. I just love this stuff. It's real pigment rich. The tube for white was huge, and it's a real nice, bright, cool white that I'll be using. I just love it. And I have that diluted down, which I'll show you. I'm also going to be using their brown. And it's got that that little half filled in circle means it's semi-transparent. If the circle is filled in, it is opaque. If the circle is empty, I believe it's fully transparent. These either come in opaque or semi-transparent. I don't think they come in transparent. But I have some paints from Viejo. They don't have that symbol on them, but they're supposed to be transparent. And that's a matter of degree, too. I think if you dilute a paint enough and it's got enough pigment in it, you can probably make it transparent. I believe you can tell me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. This is Artecho Yellow that I've just diluted 50-50 with distilled water. And this is Artecho White that I diluted 50-50 with distilled water because I couldn't find the one that I did before. Then, of course, once I made this, I found it. But I'm going to use this one. And then I was trying to wash off the tube because it was hard to get it into this little bottle. So I was trying to wash off the tube with tap water, and I might have ruined the whole entire bottle because I got tap water down into the paint, which is supposed to be real thick that I can use for dry brushing. Oh, that's right. Now I don't have paint that I can use for dry brushing in that Artecho White, so I'm probably going to have to buy another one. Oh well, it only costs $7, so it's not too bad. All right, so I think I'm ready to get started. So I'll start with my Artecho White, 5, 6, 7. 3, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. I like to shake these things 50 times. Aerosol cans I like to shake 100 times. I don't see the little white thing. I must have lost it. That goes at the bottom there. Kind of makes it so it's like new. But no big deal. This will be real nice, real bright white. Get my brush wet first. If I would have thought, I would have used some, I like Citadel Lamian medium. I would have used that to get the brush wet initially, but I forgot to grab it, so not going to get up and have to wait after that long introduction. And I'm diluting down my paint on the wet palette. Notice I'm putting my wrist together. One thing I'm forgetting, I'm sorry, I am going to have you wait. So that wrist together trick was from Tabletop Minions. So a shout out to Tabletop Minions. Also shout out to Tabletop Minions. What I forgot, and I'm going to go grab, is a painting handle, because it just makes it a little heavier and makes me a little steadier. So I'm going to go grab that. Good chance to get a glass of water if you missed your opportunity before. Also grab my little LED light and magnifier that I got cheap on Amazon. And it came with a whole bunch of other stuff that I took off of it to simplify it. But if I need to, I can add those extra lenses on there. A lot of extra stuff I can add on there to use. Sometimes it pops out of there, but it works okay on the edge. Up until recently, I was somebody who held the base when I painted, like I was doing before, but I'm not that guy now. So I've already done this area, so I'm basically going over this area with thin layers. I'm just looking at the camera quite a bit to make sure that I'm actually on camera when I'm painting, which is real frustrating when you make a video and you did some of it off camera, right? Like there, like if I lay it down, you can't see it if it's down there. Maybe I will adjust the camera just a bit so I can down there, because I can be more steady if I'm down there. And then you'll just see my mouth. That's the danger of that. But at least I won't be painting off camera as much. You got to see what the top of my head looked like anyways, right? Pretty bald. I remember my father telling me, like in 1974 or sometime close to that, "Son, do you wash your hair every day?" I said, "Yeah, Dad. I want to look good." And he said, "Well, that's going to make you go bald. It's not good for your hair to wash it that much." And as it turns out, he was probably right, because he had a nice set of hair until he was 77 years old. And I started losing my hair quite a while ago. I don't remember exactly when. I remember I was 40 when I started reading glasses, but I don't remember exactly what age I was when I really started noticing hair loss. But I would never be somebody who goes under the knife to get hair put back on my head with a needle and thread. I will just cut it short. Much easier approach. I think you can actually see what I'm doing. I'm a little bit uncomfortable at this angle, but we can work on that in the future. If I put my hands together, I can be much more steady, and also steady in the paint handle on the arm of this chair. Now, I did my best work at a table, and I'll probably make a lot of videos at a table too, but I just wanted to be comfortable today, and I wanted to see if I could make it work with this recliner chair, which they say now sitting is the new smoking. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think you're far less better off to smoke than you are to sit in a chair. But they say a recliner chair is better for your health. As long as you get enough steps a day. So hopefully this is heavy enough to steady it. And I kind of start out with dilute paint, just touching these small areas. And then I can add more later on and build up so that it's closer to. These weapons are actually made out of bone, so the bone will remain the flesh color, and the teeth will be brighter white. Or whatever color I started with, because I keep changing it, and I keep using different colors, so that every model of mine looks unique, a little different. And then I tie them all together with iridescent paint. Light's facing at me, so it's a little bit hard to see where the end of my paintbrush is. What I'm trying to do is make it so you all can see what I'm doing really well. So that's my primary objective. Like I said, buckle up, Buttercup. This is going to be a long video. There's so much detail in this. Who knows? It might take me 2 hours to get this thing painted. The YouTube algorithm definitely likes it if you watch the whole video, though. So if you do watch the whole video, I appreciate it. If you can't, I understand. If you can just leave it running and go do something else, that's highly appreciated. Because it really helps me, helps the channel if you watch more of it. off camera, sorry. It may be slightly easier to hold the base than hold this heavy up thing up. Because it may not seem like that much weight, but just that little extra weight makes me more shaky. I think I'm gonna kind of prop it up on something. Just to kind of steady me. Yeah, that seems to help. At least it's on the bottom, so it's less accurate, but at least it's on the bottom. Get some more paint. You can see my base is made of resin, not the hollow plastic that the one it came with is made out of. I like these because they're decorated, but they're an additional challenge for a lot of ways. What Tabletop Minions says, shout out to Tabletop Minions, is that he doesn't like these. Adam with the T doesn't like these because it causes the miniatures not to stay up on vantage points as well. I'm still in the painting phase, so I'm going to discover the ramifications of that, I'm sure, in the future. I kind of try to get a lot of bang for my buck on these bases too, in that I mold out parts of them. Using blue stuff and UV polymerized resin. So I kind of push it down into the blue stuff. Once I get it hot with hot water that I put in the microwave, I get the blue stuff hard, soft, and then I push the base down in there. And then some of the structures on there, like the rocks or the surface of the ground, I can glue onto a standard base. So I get kind of a little more for my money. And because I'm not taking all of it, it makes it so it's different from any other base I've ever done. Which I think is kind of important to me, that each one be unique. Sorry, I know you can't see this. I can't see it either. The light's not appropriate. Oh, this is a good opportunity to use my little UV, or LED, excuse me, LED light. Yes, I can actually see some light shining through there. So I'm just painting the back of the skull between his legs. You probably can't see it, but at least I can see it. And as Adam with the T says on Tabletop Minions, shout out to Tabletop Minions, what you can't see, you can't paint. So having good light is premium for painting. I'm just slowly building up the color. I haven't even started on this yet because I'm not sure how I'm going to hold it. I haven't even started on the harpoon yet. That's what I'm going to call it for a better name. All right, I think that's a pretty good angle. See how I've got my hand braced so that I can do this somewhat. Wishing I had a little bit more paint on my brush. I think that's okay. Sorry, I'm trying to see where you can see it. But the problem is, if you can see it, I probably can't see it there. I think that's a good compromise for both of us. Had a professor that always would say, apparently I can't think on my feet if he'd make a mistake when he was standing, because thinking sitting down is apparently different than thinking on your feet or thinking in the process. So same thing with painting. So can I paint, and then can I paint so that the camera can see me painting? Okay, I got some paint on the harpoon. So I'm going to use my brush while it's still wet and just kind of try to remove some of it. Yeah, I think you can actually see what I'm doing. And I can see what I'm doing. And I'm at a good angle and I'm comfortable. Now, it's hard to tell if that is actually a tooth. I don't think it is. Yeah, I think you can actually see it, but I can't see it, so I'm gonna lay that down. I'm gonna get my LED light here. Yeah. Get a little more paint on my brush, see if I can do this left-handed. Kind of rotating the brush on the wet palette. As long as I don't block the light. I'm steadying my hand with my fingers. I would have never even considered making a video like this, other than I've watched other people paint and I found it very satisfying. If it hadn't been for that, I never would have made a video like this. And I know because it's WarCry, Age of Sigmar, it won't get very many views anyways. It's all right. Just a less popular game. The good thing about it being a less popular game is if you do play it, you'll pay less money. I just bought the huge Dominion set. Comes with a ton of Stormcast Eternals and Orc Crew of Boys. And that whole huge, heavy box, huge set was just over $100. So this is not always true, but sometimes the sets with the terrain, if you want to get those right away, like the Extremist box would be the one I'm talking about. If you want to get the set with all the terrain, it's got really nice Stormcast Eternal terrain. A rune of their little buildings. It's a good idea to get that at release, because the price will go up because of that terrain. The set with all the models, like Dominion, if you get that later on, I'm sorry you couldn't see that at all. If you get that set later on, you'll save money. All right. I don't want to set them down on that weapon or I'll break it off. Teeth all over the place, but I think it's pretty cool. Not the easiest thing in the world to paint, but pretty cool. And I like painting things like this that are very intricate. That's why I like Games Workshop. So how do you feel about that? Tell me in the comments. How do you feel about very intricate models? So paint on his helm. So if it's just when you just did it, sometimes you can take your finger. Now it's probably not the best thing because it gets oil from your fingers on the model, which is maybe not the best thing, but it is fast and easy to remove it. Get a little more water with my paint. I've discovered recently that these really good painters basically have their wet palette floating in water. So I was real stingy with the water, and that was a mistake I was making. And like I watched them paint for a long time before I actually noticed that they had the thing just floating in water. So you have these aha moments of something that you were doing wrong all along. And then all of a sudden you notice. And sometimes that will allow you to come off of a plateau where you're painting the same for a long time and then all of a sudden you get better. So hopefully having enough water on my wet palette will move me forward, right? Okay, before I do anything else, I'm noticing that the paint is up here near the ferrule, maybe on the ferrule, this new brush. So apparently the dry part of the brush, I probably didn't get the brush sufficiently wet or whatever in the correct way, or didn't use any medium or whatever. Allowed this paint to travel up the bristles here. So I'm gonna go remove that with some hot water and soap right away, and maybe even use a little alcohol if I'm not happy with it, or if it has a hook tip at the end. So I'm gonna do that. I'll be right back. Apparently there's a sweet spot where with a new brush, you've used it to where it kind of has the characteristics that you want, but yet you haven't used it so long that you've kind of wore it out. So hopefully this brush, now that I've cleaned it, will be in that sweet spot. It looks like it has a pretty nice point. This is an expensive brush. My dad was actually an art degree person, although he never used it, which was a shame. He went to college for art, and he had a red sable brush. And I remember him always talking about that red sable brush. But I think I might actually own a red sable brush, not the one that he had, which I wish I owned. But one that I think I bought for who knows how much money. And I just wanted to have one because he was always raving about him. But I'm kind of afraid to use that thing. I think I'm much better off with these brushes that I am using. And I think maybe they were $1 a piece, I'm thinking. That sounds like the kind of price I would pay for something. All right, I am going to change colors. So my brush doesn't have much paint on it. And having it mix with this next color won't be so bad anyways, because yellow is a light color like white. Shake this 50 times. $20. $40. Sorry, I'm kind of multitasking here. I also got the TV going. I'm subscribing and giving a like to a fellow gamer. And I'll glance up occasionally and look at, he's talking about Kill Team Salvation. All right, so let's put a spot in this down. So these videos where I paint don't feel like something you have to be glued to or something you have to go back and watch a part again that you missed. You certainly can if you want, but it's certainly not like that. This is pretty laid back production. All right, so with this yellow, what I'm painting is things that are maybe made out of cloth. So I'm gonna call this made out of rope. I'm gonna paint this yellow. Now it's not gonna actually end up being yellow because it's going to be painted with iridescent paint with the airbrush. I'll make a video where I do all these, but I'm almost thinking I might spray them all at once now that I'm only, after this figure, one away from having a full WarCry warband. So I'm really close to being able to play this game. The starter edition for WarCry, which contained all the terrain. You got runes, tons of pieces of runes in the set. You got all these little fences that damage you if you land on them or fall by them. They're just absolutely awesome. And then there's the head of Sigmar, a statue that's fallen down that's on its side. There's a platform with skeletons hanging on it. The very first thing that I painted with acrylic paints and WarHammer, and it turned out just absolutely fantastic. So who knows if I would have stuck with the hobby if I hadn't had such good results at first. And then of course I tried to probably make it faster because it took forever to do. I probably tried to make it faster and didn't do as good a job. So I looked back and saw that model, how it turned out, and said, well, you know, I need to get back to something on this quality level. If I can. And I'm sure I followed the exact tutorial for painting that was in the book or whatever from Games Workshop. Their heavy metal paint team is awesome, and following their procedure is definitely a good way to go. I just wanted to paint things quick. So the way I paint things quick so I can actually play the game as well as paint. Because I painted about 3 pieces of terrain and then stopped for like 2 years. That wasn't good. So the way that I paint things quick is I prime them with the color that it's mainly going to be, flesh colored, because these guys are not wearing a lot of armor. And then I just paint by numbers. I try to reduce it to 4 colors. It'll probably end up being 5. I'll probably end up mixing a couple colors together, which I just love doing because it gives me a unique color on my model. And then I paint the whole thing with iridescent paint with the airbrush. And really makes it pop, in my opinion. All right. So it's good to start with these bandages, I like to call them, on the backs of his legs because there's not going to be much primer there. So if I start building up paint now, I'll maybe have something by the time I'm done. In the front, where there's more primer, it'll definitely cover easier. I have a little more paint on my brush too than I would normally do. And that part's going to be primered, so it's good I have less paint on my brush now than when I do that. So to have less paint on the front part of this, what I did is I just diluted it on the wet palette a little more than I did when I was painting the back. Okay, make sure that's not a boot. Well, I think that is a boot. So some of these guys wear one boot. Kind of like one of my favorite musicians, Michael Jackson, would wear one glove, if you're old enough to remember that. If you do remember that, you're old. So the Untamed Beasts like to wear one boot. So there's just the front of the boot on one side, and it changes legs. And I'll paint that with the brown. Have that look like leather. Okay, yeah, now when I go over the backs of the legs with this more dilute paint, it's actually starting to show because I've already got a layer of paint down there. Yeah, this is turning out pretty well. As long as I stay patient and work on it slowly, it probably will continue to look good. I wasn't that happy with the last one I painted. I think I kind of just tried to rush too much. I was also tired. I was in bed, so I was partially reclined. But the good thing maybe is that nobody will watch that one because YouTube restricted the video. So my feet were showing. All right, there is some cloth wrapped around this right here. So what I think I'm going to do is mix together the white and the yellow. So maybe this will have two unique colors of paint. So that'll have a unique color. And what I find is that even though the color differences are very subtle now when I'm painting by the numbers part, filling in the details, later on after I paint it with the iridescent paint, it seems to make more of a difference. So where I think the yellow will be much more pronounced iridescent, I think this with the white mixed in it will be more pearlescent, which is the second most subtle color underneath the iridescent paint to paint your stuff with, the first being silver. Silver will be very subtle, and white will be pearlescent, so a little less subtle than the silver. All right, and then I just put a little paint on there, especially for the back, so that there'll be something there. And then that little loop I will paint with the brass colored, AK interactive paint. And then this part right here, I'm gonna leave bone colored or my flesh colored, which will be the same. Okay, I'll clean my brush and go back to the yellow. And I want to do these little leather straps. Yes, he has leather straps. They've all had these. This is a really nice brush for doing this detailed work. For probably $1 I paid for it. Really nice. Really makes it easy. Now, everything is pretty covered in the back, so I don't think he may have a belt on the side. Let me get my little light out again and check it out. He may have a little belt showing. No, I don't really see much of a belt showing. Oh, I did get paint on his chest, which is easy to remove now. Because I thought he had a strap there, but he doesn't. So let me get, since I didn't notice it right away, I'll get my brush wet with just water, and I'll go into that chest and clean it off with water. It'll be very dilute yellow, and then I'll take my dry brush and remove it. Really cool trick. I think it was Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy. Shout out to Duncan Rhodes Painting Academy that had a video, and I apologize if it wasn't your video, but I think it was. I'm pretty positive it was. That showed ways to fix mistakes when you're painting. Awesome video. Highly recommend watching. All right, that looks pretty darn good. Oh, I think I'm going to go back and get a little more yellow and do this cloth on the arm a little more. There, that'll pop nice when I do the iridescent. So the color I'm using is golden brown, the shifters, Viejo, and I'm believing that that yellow will make it have kind of a gold sheen to it. Now, I haven't found that brown has like a brown sheen like I was hoping, but it has more of a green sheen. So probably what I'll do is kind of eradicate that effect in that I will probably go on top of the iridescent paint with some brown and kind of chill it out. Because I don't want to introduce another color of green that I haven't used in my color scheme. My aesthetics is that I don't like to have too many colors on my models. And that's true for my cars. Like if the car's black, I like it to have black wheels. I can't afford really to do that, but that's my aesthetic standard that if I had the money to buy everything that I wanted, I would do. My Fender guitar had some white plastic for the pickguard and the buttons and stuff like that, and I got a blackout kit and removed that. So I'm going over these little teeth that are going through his arm with white. So I went back to the white paint. And just enhancing those a little bit. I do the edges of the boots at the top. They kind of look like teeth, but I'll end up painting over that anyways. So it'll just actually look a little bit highlighted. Or at least until the iridescent paint. Probably it'll look less highlighted once the iridescent paint. Okay, this brush has got a little bit of a hook on it now. So I'm gonna go clean this brush again. Sorry, it's a pretty new brush, so good chance to get another glass of water. Thanks for your patience. So I want to explain, I've seen this explained by others, but I couldn't really understand it, of why the bristles spread out like this when there's paint down in the ferrule, or I believe a hook happens when you have paint down in the ferrule on just one side. And this brush seems to be wicking paint down into the ferrule, so that's why I'm having to get up and clean it. So here's what my understanding of it is. You have your bristles and it's got a point on it, okay? And when you get paint down in the ferrule, that causes them to spread like that, like my fingers are spreading when I put my finger down in my finger webs. If you have paint down on one side, I think it makes like a little hook. Like it kind of sticks to these a little bit and causes these to kind of bend over too. So that's my understanding of why that hook occurs. I'm at an hour, so if you're still with me, you're very patient, because this is definitely taking a long time to paint. Sorry about the cough. All right, I'm going to switch to brown. So I'm using this full strength. You can't really shake this stuff. This stuff is pretty thick, but I think it's also pretty stable. So I'm going to put this down. And I can even put it down on top of some brown that's already there. It's not going to affect it much. Okay, I'll just try to get the end of my brush wet. Yeah, that's too wet. The paint's breaking down. So you want the paint to where it's thin, but not to where it's unevenly thin, if that makes any sense. All right, so I'm gonna paint that boot. Make sure, oh, yep, I was gonna paint the wrong side. So there's the boot right there, on his right this time. It was on his left the last time. I'll paint right over where I painted it white. Okay, let me get my little light so I can see inside. And the first layer is just kind of like a very, very thin glaze, because it's probably not primed super well, because it was kind of back behind. Then I'll probably be able to bring the color out more. I put another layer on it. All right. I'm also going to do the cloak. And this is where the speed paint was great. But I can make something similar to speed paint if I get this dilute enough. I'll probably get it more dilute than what I had it before. Because I want to get down into the crevices of that cloak. Yeah, see, that's very similar to speed paint. And if nothing else, the speed paint movement made people use more dilute paint, which that's a good thing for everyone. Just running down and getting in the crevices more. Not really painting the top surface of it much. Just kind of getting down in the crevices. And I can kind of go over the top with a little more. Heavy paint once that dries. Okay, this is very dilute. Again. Just trying to get down in those crevices. All right, let's see what he's got on the front. Yeah, it's coming up over his left shoulder. So I'm gonna get the paint very dilute. Diluter than I would normally use. Okay, now I'm gonna go over this tail on him with this real dilute paint again before I go over it with the heavier paint, kind of paint the high points. Now it'll make the high points more rich color than the inset, which is counterintuitive, but remember that there's going to be the extra step of the iridescence. And my experience is the richer the color and the glossier the color on the surface will make it iridesce more. So there's kind of a method to my madness. So it's not like everybody paints things. Okay, get a little bit more really, really dilute paint. Didn't want it there. Not really trying to build up right now the top layer. I'm trying to build up the bottom layer so that there's not little white spots or flesh-colored spots underneath the cloak. Where I have to be careful not to get any on that rope, and I know I'll get it on the rope. So I'm going to actually go from the top. Get some really dilute paint. And that way if I whoops, it'll also be easier to remove really dilute paint. Yep, I did. I got some on his horn. But it was really super easy to remove because it was so dilute. This is difficult. Yep, I got some on his arm. soon enough to where I can probably just get it off with this cheap dry brush. Yeah, it looks pretty good. The trick to getting mistakes fixed is to act quickly. All right, again, real super dilute paint. So I'm just looking at the texture. If it looks like feathers, I'm painting it brown. And then if it looks like chainmail is what it looks like to me, the other texture, I'm going to paint it some other color. Maybe brass. Probably examine it with the magnifying glass to see that it really looks like chainmail before I do that, before I paint it brass. Again, I'm just going over this with the real dilute paint just to get it down in the crevices. All right, now I'm going to go through with a little bit thicker paint. This is more like it's milk, like cow's milk thickness. Which is always what they tell you. And before was more like watery milk, like that. Soybean milk, that soy milk or whatever, more watery. So hopefully this will put more pigment on the surface. That's probably a little too thick. Hopefully that'll settle. Yeah, that's probably a little too thick. I probably goofed it up. Might have whoopsed on his shoulder, and this time it'll be worse because the paint is thicker. I don't see any on his shoulders. That's good. I got lucky. Didn't feel like my hand was under that good of control, but apparently it was. All right. Oh, here's another part I forgot. Look at, there's another part of that texture. So again, I'm going to go back to that super dilute paint. I'm going to take the paint I already diluted like milk and dilute it down to soy milk. The thinnest I can get it while it still has a good color to it. Yeah, it looks like there's some more over here. Which is kind of flowing out the front, so that means I have to paint the back. This brush is pretty ideal for this though. Pretty ideal. Not a lot of primer on that side. Oh, there's a whole bunch more up there too. Oh, and here's the back of this cloak, which I can now reach. Definitely a good idea to get that real dilute soybean paint, milk paint when you're doing hard to reach areas in the back, because it won't show very much anyways. And it will cover more completely. You won't have a lot of white spots. Because by gravity, the paint kind of flows down into those recesses. Okay, I'm gonna look at this with the magnifying glass. Be glad I did this when I see the model on my big screen TV after. I watch these videos just to see if I can do a better job making the video. So it's going to be magnified a little bit more when I see it back. So it's not a bad idea to magnify this now so I can see it better. I'd be really happy I did that. Oops, hope I didn't break it. All right, that was hard. That was a hard cloak to paint. I'm even going to use my phone flashlight for even some more light. Be able to see this even better. So there's a little crevice down in there, which I'm kind of painting blind. But now that I've seen it, I think I can eradicate that little spot without paint. There, I think that's pretty good. Now we did have that boot, which I think I only put one layer of paint, yes. So I'm gonna go with a little thicker paint this time. Milk thickness instead of soy milk thickness. Okay, I'm gonna try to work with just this one light. Let my glasses adjust back. It's just the front of the boot that is leather. The back has got a cloth, kind of a bandage like wrapping on it. I'll get the back of where the boot was leather. It looks okay. I think it pretty much self-leveled. I don't think it looks too thick. I think that's the number one tip, is to not have your paint be too thick. And just, if you have to, build it up in layers. Even if you have to go over it 12 times. Better off to go over with 12 thin layers than one thick layer, right? Pretty good. All right. Now my next paint is red. So let's look at this with the phone light. Is that chainmail? I'm going to call that should I call it metallic or not? I'm going to not call that metallic. So maybe the only thing I'll paint with my AK Interactive Brass is maybe that star. Normally using the phone for recording instead of the iPad, so I haven't realized the utility of this nice little focused flashlight beam, which is really good. Get at a better angle for that so I don't get paint on his thigh. This is where you really got to trust your brush that you don't have a hook on it. And I got paint on the thigh. No. Good. I don't think I did. I think I'm good. I didn't really get the paint down in there where I could, but I think it's kind of impossible to get it down there. Let me make sure that I'm using super dilute paint. I'll try again. There's a little spot there that I could get. And then if I can hold it with my neck, the light. I also have another stand that I could use for the phone, just for the light. So that might be something in my future. Okay, I didn't think the video I was playing was this long, so I'm gonna look to make sure that it didn't autoplay like it likes to do. It looks like the same. Oh, it's not the same channel. Yep, it autoplayed. That's okay. I like that guy's channel, so I'll give him the view. The bad part about that autoplay is if you're not paying attention to it, now it won't recommend it as a video for me to watch where I actually watch it. Nice. I was able to get into the place I thought was impossible because I just needed thinner paint. The thin paint is the bomb. All right, now I'm going to paint red. Let's see how that brush is. That brush looks excellent. It doesn't feel like much is moving in there when I shake it, so I don't know if I'm really doing anything. That was a waste of paint. I put way too much on there. Again, there's a lot of texture of this, so I want it really dilute. That looks pretty much as dilute as I can make it without it breaking down. So first thing I'm going to paint is that belt. Belt buckle. Now when I go to either side of it, I'll see more that doesn't have paint on it, but that's good for now. And then I'm going to paint this, which I've determined is not really male. I'm going to paint that red. And that'll really allow it to contrast with the brown. And I believe it'll have a brown iridescence to it, which will tie it together with the brown. So I'm kind of boldly going where no man has gone before with this iridescent paint. By almost exclusively using it on my minis. So it'll be an interesting little science experiment, if nothing else. Real super dilute paint is going to get down in the crevices. And if you're not doing the iridescent paint, you could probably just leave it like this, because it won't have white spots, places that you didn't paint. And you won't have to worry about trying to make the surface more glossy, as I'm trying to do with the iridescent. And even though I'm not painting it with the metallic, of course everything will be metallic when I paint with the iridescent paint. Everything will be iridescent. Another thing too is if there is some places that I forgot to paint, and that's what looks the worst, is when you totally didn't paint something at all that should have been painted. If you do the iridescent like I do, it kind of fills that stuff in. So I feel like my stuff turns out better than it would because of the iridescent paint trick. The technology I'm using makes my painting turn out better than it normally would with my level of experience. I've been probably painting with acrylics for 6 months. That's probably a good estimate. Of course, you know, when you start painting, you don't, like, unfortunately note the day, so you don't really know exactly when you started, right? And it was weird, I was kind of using oils a lot to paint minis from other games because I knew I would need experience. All right, that's it. I'm gonna call them good. Now I'm gonna paint this a combination of red and brown. So just that little part there, I'm gonna mix red and brown together, make a reddish brown, of course. So I'm gonna use my two really dilute paints. Make a reddish brown. More brown. brown. Make a real dilute reddish brown. And then I'm going to paint just that little part of that cape, which looks different. Real dilute. I like that. I like that color. Get a little more red. Just make that pop a little more. This paint's more thick. My experience is, you can tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, my experience has been the thicker you have the paint, the more glossy it is, and the thinner it is, the more matte it is. So I'm using a little thicker paint to try to make it a little more glossy, so it'll kind of pop metallic a little more with the iridescent. And that's what I have. That's such a long session, I'm not going to paint the base today. Thank you, painters.